Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, and each week I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another, and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to tell some of yours. I am so excited for this week's guest. I have Dav on with me. Thank you so much for being here. Kind of tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Hi, nice to be here, Todd. Thank you for having me on your show. So my name's Dav. I'm head of sales for a global software company called Impero. The company I work for specializes in student safety software and classroom management software. So it's really important to me as a mum, single mum of two young children, that I do work in software. I enjoy the field that I work in. I think another area of mine that I'm really passionate about is I love working in a field where it's mostly men. So I like to fly that flag, make sure that, we're empowering lots of ladies in this field. So really enjoy it. I've been in EdTech a long time, coming on 20 years now. So It's a little bit about me. But yeah.
Well, I have so many questions I want to ask you because I can't wait to dive into some of these topics. But whenever I start these conversations, I always kind of like to start with the same one. And that is, thinking back to your childhood when you were dreaming of what you were going to be when you grew up. Does it align at all with what you're doing now?
Oh goodness, no, not at all. When I was younger, I was on the sports team. So I used to run the 1500 meters. I was in the athletics team. So I always dreamed of either being an athlete or working in sports. And I had my heart set on being a physiotherapist. So for years and years and years, I thought I would be a physiotherapist. So yeah, long way off. And then at uni, I did law and a lot of business administration. So again, completely off field. And here I am. And now I'm in, education technology. Completely unrelated, but it's really interesting. A lot of things that do resonate and a lot of things that I did enjoy. So, the competitiveness of sports is great working in sales. So I've still got that edge, really enjoy that side. The law side as well, contracts, patents, DPIAs, data agreements, and all these sorts of things, which, most people don't find interesting, but I really do. It's quite interesting learning about different countries, continents, and their data privacy laws and things. It's quite a hot topic at the moment. So again, I enjoy reading. So
you clearly found where you were meant to be because you've been there now a couple decades, and I love hearing people's journeys when what they dreamed of isn't where they ended up, but you can tell that where they ended up is where they're meant to be. So I absolutely love that about your story. So how did you get connected with Impero? Because being an educator myself, I know the value of online safety, and I know that with the work that you do, even like you said, like understanding the different laws in different states and countries and all that kind of stuff. So talk to me a little about how you got involved with Impero and kind of like what it is.
It's really interesting. I don't want to say I fell into it, but education is quite incestuous, if I can say that. So normally if you're in the field, and you've been in the field a while, you generally know people that know people. So that's one side. Now that's really important as well, because you then come with a kind of almost like a stamp of credibility. Now that's really, really important in our field, because some of the software that we're working with, it's integral to learning, and it's front and center in a lot of organizations, or let's say the back end of a district, for example. It plays an important role. So to have a level of credibility, number one, is really important. And looking back to when I was thinking about my next step, and Impero was on the table, for example, I knew ex-colleagues that had worked here, and I had a really good insight into what they did. So I came from a SIS background, for example, and this field at Impero was very much around online safety. So again, the two, although not completely complementary, did enhance a lot of the conversations I'd had in a previous career with a lot of colleagues. They were always really interested in student safety and that side of things. And we were always asked, could you recommend anything? So when I had the opportunity to work at Impero, that really stood out to me personally. And again, as a parent, it played a huge role. because what they do as an organization is support all age groups, K through 12 and beyond. So having 2 children that spend a lot of time on tech and, they have their own devices, different devices, this was something that I've seen as a parent. I understood from a teacher's perspective, but I also understood this from a network IT infrastructure perspective, and bringing that all together in terms of liability as well. And it really appealed to me because it brought in lots of different areas of my previous experience where I thought, I'm really going to make a difference here and I can add some value, and I think it's going to be impactful. I think as well, because it was a team of mainly, I shouldn't say this, young male salesmen, that I felt, oh, I'm going to smash it here and I'm really going to make a difference. And I really enjoyed that challenge as well. So there was an element of my competitive side that did come out, and I thought, no, we can really do something. We're going to do something that's a bit different. And again, we continue to do that. So my journey at Impero is coming up to 5 years. And, each year I feel like I've been in a different role, done something different. And we keep pushing boundaries, and we keep pushing and changing the norm and challenging the thoughts, that people have around software and software usage. So to be a thought leader is really important. We just have to stay ahead of the curve. And I really enjoy that area of the role, that you start to influence and educate and support more than you do sell. You become an informed advisor. And that's, again, really important. And it goes back to working for an organization that has a level of credibility, and also the network that you build throughout the career. So yeah, a bit of a long answer to that one.
Well, you said something in there though that you mentioned at the beginning, and then you mentioned there again that I would love to dive into. That you noticed right away, and this is very common in tech spheres, that it is a male-dominated field. And that when you noticed that, you were like, this is a challenge. I want to get in here and I want to prove that women should be here right alongside you. And so talk to me a little bit about that experience, because I think, a lot of my listeners and viewers are educators, which is a predominantly female heavy field. And so me being an elementary educator as a male, I was used to being the minority on my campus. That's just the way it was. It was all women. And so I think it's very different though when you walk into a field that has been historically dominated by men, when you bring just as much to the table and you're trying to break into that. So talk to me a little bit about that experience.
It was really interesting, because I think I felt a little bit out of place, because I don't look at things from a technical perspective. I never have. But I've still been quite successful in the ed tech field. And that was because I always used to look at things from an end user perspective. How is this going to work? How usable is it? Are the end users going to pick this up? So for example, teachers, will they be able to pick this up and use this? And is this going to add value to what they do, really support them in the classroom, right through to those coaches, mentors, guidance staff that are really working with learners that may have some concerns, some safeguarding concerns, safety concerns. Is this going to help you? And it's about the part of the role that I really enjoy. And I think where I thought I was going to add most value is putting myself in the shoes of the person that's coming to us with the problem. I always used to look at things as a problem solving type scenario, opposed to, oh, you just want to buy some software. So a lot of my colleagues that were more technical used to always have a technical conversation with the CTO or somebody else, and it was very much about infrastructure network. How is this going to work? I used to look at things differently, and I used to think, well, what's going on? What's prompted this conversation? Why are we having this? Why are we talking? Why are you giving me the time of day? And, you've asked for this meeting. Really getting under the bonnet, as I call it, of the problem. And often it was very simple things but they were really frustrating, and they were elevating it to a level where, they really just needed some help. So it was very much about trying to understand how we can find them a solution. And sometimes it was the empathy as well, but often sometimes you just have to say, we can't help, or we can't do things this way, but maybe this other way or this other solution would help. So it was very much consultative. It was quite different, and I think it was a different approach at the time when I started, where it was a licensed sell, and now what we're doing is selling a solution that addresses a specific issue or a number of issues in education. And that's a shift change. And that's a culture change. And again, this is quite exciting, where you come in and you are completely different, or your style is completely different, but your metrics are still the same. You know, Wolf of Wall Street is my favorite film for a reason. But again, that's the sales side. It appeals to me because I'm very competitive, but equally, I'm not here for a quick win. I'm here for a long-term relationship, and that's what we're doing. And that's really important as well in our field. And I'm quite pleased to say that when I first started in some of my earlier roles in EdTech, it had a really bad reputation. It was very much about, you know, being really competitive, really dominant, and that sort of thing. And that's not what I wanted. But also, that doesn't appeal to people like me. I wouldn't want to work in that kind of environment where it's very much dog eat dog. It's really competitive. So we had to change, and we had to make changes for the right reason to attract the talent in the first place. And this is really important because people do add value. Lots of different types of people add value in different ways, but we were finding that there's a very specific role type in this industry, and I don't think that's the case. I think the end users are very different, as you've mentioned. But you know, you've got different types of people that work in the field, and so we've got to be able to look at problems from different perspectives. So, you know, again, I don't know if that answers your question, but I like dealing with challenges head on because I'm a problem solver. I think that's why I like to do it.
Have you found that there have been, that you've been able to kind of, in the different roles that you've been in, to bring more women into the fold and kind of diversify that a little bit?
I think the company, the organization has definitely evolved on that. So I think that's a company-wide evolution, I'm going to say. So it was a culture change, but I think one of the things that we do and we're really keen to do is to support those that are in role currently, and, you know, make sure they have a pathway and they feel supported and they can move forward. I've certainly found in my early days, and again, it may be because I wasn't at the start of my career, I was well into my career at that time, that I had a lot more confidence, so I could handle these situations. And what I found is those that were at the start of their career still found it really difficult to deal in this environment. So you're looking at not only EdTech, but you're looking at sales as well, and you put the two together, and actually it's quite pressurized, and it's not that nice, and it can be really difficult. So we had to do a lot around changing the culture, and I think my role now is very much, I would like to be, you know, a role model, a mentor, but also be able to talk about our software and services confidently and show others how that can be done and achieved. And you don't have to be an aggressive salesperson to do that. And it's okay to say it's not right, or we don't think it's right for you, but maybe, you know, in a year or so we can work with you, and the door's always left open. So it's a different approach.
Well, you know, I love hearing the things you're sharing. And I always, you know, I appreciate great companies, but when I see that there's been little changes and things behind the scenes as they've learned and grown, that always impresses me even more. But I'd love to ask you a question that I try to ask throughout each of these episodes too. And that is, you know, I kind of feel no matter how far you climb up a ladder and how successful you become, there's always some there's always some element of doubt that still sometimes creeps in with, am I good enough? Am I meant to be here? Am I the person for this? What do you do to keep doubt at bay in your own life?
That's a really hard question. I'm now doubting and thinking about how do I answer this. So I think it's really difficult. I think it's important to be honest. I think it's important to look at things, be pragmatic about it, you know, and look at your skill set. And this is what I try and do. I do not think I'm the finished article, far from it. And I'm so eager and hungry to learn. And I like to surround myself with people that are different, are aspiring, and they have lots of different types of experience, because that's the bits that I thrive on, and they keep me going. And I'm excited and animated by that also. But equally, it's because I have a platform and I have an opportunity to influence some changes. Now, not everybody gets that, and I agree, but very much it's about taking those opportunities when they're presented to you and taking a bit of a leap of faith. Confidence is really important. Again, not the finished article, but I could confidently say that, you know, well, let's deal with it. Let's take it on and let's see how we move it forward. And having the right support in place is important as well. And I've been quite fortunate in the sense that I've always had a really strong support network. So it's important to me that I develop that support network for others also. so they also feel confident enough to take that leap of faith and move forward in their careers and, you know, their aspirations. Ricks. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that answer, because there were two things you said there. And the first one was, you know, understanding I'm not complete. I'm not done being built, grown, everything like that, and knowing that that's one piece. But also, just like you said, finding that group that will support you and encourage you and help grow you along the way. So I love that. Well, Dav, every time I end these conversations, I end with the same question. And that is, if people were to have listened to this or watched this today, and they're only going to walk away with one thing, what is your one thing for them?
Okay, so let's say we'll make it a little bit about, because your listeners are teachers, so let's do it a bit more about education. So I think there's a couple of things that are really prevalent at the moment that are really important to me. So the takeaway for me is, I think educators, I think, well done. You've done a phenomenal job over the pandemic and over lockdown. And I think people don't really appreciate how hard things have been, but equally how hard it's been for those of us that had to homeschool and those that haven't been able to see anybody. So I think a huge well done to everybody for getting through that. And also, I think good luck in your future in trying to define what that looks like going forward. And I think, you know, the takeaway for me is, I do work in ed tech, I work in education, and I think it's really important to now keep that snowball going and watch things evolve, and making sure that technology doesn't hinder education, it only enhances education. So that's really important to me. And also that we're keeping an eye and making sure that our learners are okay, that we're looking after their well-being, and that we're making sure that we're there for them when something doesn't quite go right, because they're the next generation. So they're going to grow up with technology, they're going to grow up with this great access, let's say, to education, fingers crossed, and we're the ones that can elevate and move them forward. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for all, especially those listeners of yours that work in the field. So
I love that. And that is such beautiful advice and words. And I encourage everybody to go check out Impero. I am loving what they are offering and how they work to keep kids safe. And so I'm thankful that you were able to come on here today and kind of share a little about them, but also share some of your own stories. So thank you so much for being a guest on Tell Your Story.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode. Remember, you can check out all the past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get your stuff, it's there. I hope today's conversation with Dav has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.